All right, hello everyone for joining us tonight and for Joy Langley's session and how to manage stress and anxiety. Hello, Joy.
Hi there, Yuzhong. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I mean, it's Sunday evening, so
It is, isn't it? It is.
mixed feelings, but yes. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Like it's a Sunday, as you said, but I'm still very hyper even on Sundays.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for Joy and for accepting my invitation to become a speaker at the summit. Joy is a qualified therapist with a lot of experience, and you might have seen Joy's website for stress busting techniques. So today, Joy will talk us through the how to manage stress and anxiety, and we have someone. Oh, hello, Galaxy A70. I love your nickname there. Hey, hello. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, just to pop it in the chat where if you have any questions at all throughout the session, then we will try to answer them at the end of the session today. Thank you. So, Joey, would you like to maybe start your lovely slides there?
I certainly will. I certainly will. And it's all over to me, isn't it? Right, let's get that going. Make sure it's okay. So I hope you can see all of that. Yes, no, maybe.
It's lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. So you tell me when to go and I'll go.
Absolutely. We actually have one more question from Galaxy A70. I love your nickname, I have to say again. So can these slides be emailed? Absolutely. So what you can do is if you email me your email address, or if you just pop it in the chat for me, then I'll email it to you afterwards. These slides are wonderful. I know Joey had to spend a lot of time to make this really, really lovely. So there is lots of useful information here. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us on the summit today. My name's Joy Langley, and as Yuzhong said, I'm a stress management coach. Been doing that for about 15 years, work in the UK, and I have lots of private clients that see me for all kinds of things, including anxiety and depression, and of course stress. So stress has become the umbrella term in a way for anything that happens to us that we don't like, but it kind of encompasses other illnesses in a way, such as depression and anxiety. So I'm going to move on from there. So you're not alone. Brilliant way to remind everybody that even though we're all independent units, bodies, actually we have a very shared experience with other human beings, and we can extend that to humans by being empathic, by being kind, and by being caring. So what you're going to learn today, hopefully a couple of things I'll go through, and I should have my clock in front of me, which I haven't, to keep track of time. It's too late now. I have to somehow remember. What you learn today is basically that thoughts are king. They're at the top of the tree. They're the thing that actually triggers stress, that triggers anxiety, that triggers depression. And it's all around CBT ideas, so cognitive behavioural therapy ideas, that things happen to all of us in life, but it's really how we interpret it. That is the real crux of the issue. What do we make things mean? And human beings are meaning-making machines, so you can't forget that. There's 3 M's in there. Everything that happens to us, we're storing it away, in our little box, which is our subconscious, and using it to inform us about the future. So, from the moment you're born, every little experience has been logged. I call it tagged and bagged somewhere, and you have put it somewhere in your memory. So I'll hopefully be going over a little bit of that. We have lots of beliefs and rules that we make and assumptions that we make about life. But really, it's to ultimately protect us from danger, and it's a survival mechanism. Also, I'll give you 3 strategies that are going to be talking about the physical sensations about stress, the thoughts that create stress. So basically what contributes towards stress. It's mind things, body things, and we're just going to be going through a couple of the ideas. And last of all, one of the things that I really enjoy, it's my own kind of concept, is around stress and looking at it as being a teacup. Now, you'll probably find lots of ideas around containers and holders, but basically the stress is coming in things are building up across a week, across the months, across the years, events that you don't necessarily process. And unless you're managing to reduce your stress, because stress is going to happen, then it can be have really, I suppose, bigger impacts on your physical well-being. So you know that the cup fills up, and I also want to encourage you to empty it. So different definitions. Everyone's got a definition. If you go to a dictionary, it's got some long, complicated thing, I'm sure. But basically, it's around pressure and stress. And for me, I go through varying degrees of that throughout a whole day. So definition is really the demands being made of me or being made of you at any point in time are just bigger than you can cope with at that moment. And you'll probably notice that sometimes you can cope with one thing and you go back to do it a couple of days later and you just can't cope, or a month later. You've got to work out what's happening for me. And really, if you look at what's happening in your environment or what's happening to you physically or to other people, I think something has shifted, and that's what's making you less, you can't tolerate it as much, your resilience is down, and yeah, you just can't manage it. So don't be tough on yourself. It's a very flexible thing. So let's find out some more. And as I said down here, different thresholds for different people, and you can have a completely different response from one moment to the next. So don't be put off by that. So stress is a tension and a pressure and a strain. And, you know, the person who really came up with the name stress was called Hans Sale. He's kind of called the godfather of stress. But he was looking at the way in which stress impacts us in a sort of physical sense for illnesses. And we've kind of adapted it to cover everything. So from, let's say, breaking a nail to, you know, your car breaking down to perhaps your children, you know, not doing their homework. We use the word stress, I think, far too much, far too often, and that can be a problem in itself. So language is a really big thing for me. But it's an evolutionary, you know, adaptation. It's our survival mechanism. Don't be angry that you've got stress, because if you lost that, you might find yourself doing really like dangerous activities that might end your life. So you might be on a beach and you run up to a cliff and you say, oh, I'm just going to dive into this water, and you do, and it might be the end of you because there might be rocks beneath that. So your stress response would hopefully give you a bit of a nudge and say, excuse me, do you think that's a good idea to do that? And hopefully you'll realize that, no, it's not such a clever thing to do. So don't knock that evolutionary adaptation that we've got. It is there for a reason. And you might notice you'll have physical signs, psychological or mental signs or emotional signs that you are experiencing this kind of rush of energy, which can make you quite jittery, quite uncomfortable. And yeah, you'll know when it's there. But that energy is there to help you to respond. And to be quite honest, it can make you quite sort of superhuman and quite, you know, adapt, your eyes focusing really, really hard on something. You've got the energy going, you know, it's really a good energy in and of itself. And we've got to learn how to, I think, manage that. So stress can be triggered from things outside of you and things inside of you. The outside things can be your, let's say, work. It could be your neighbors. It could be the toxic environment that we live in with, you know, smoke from cars and planes and everything. So it can be outside of you. But stress can also be created from things going on inside you. My biggest one is obviously thoughts, so up in your head, what's going on there, but also what's happening if you're experiencing an illness. So illnesses can obviously be quite stressful on the body. We all know that. They make us feel tired, they can make us feel irritable, and they just make us worry. So worry's a big thing within my world as well. It contributes towards stress. So we're going to just dive in a little bit more and look at this concept of automatic negative thoughts. Now, we have lots of thoughts. I have quite a few, to be quite honest. One thought a second, apparently. So you can get to 50 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. It's an awful lot of thinking going on. And the big question would be, can you remember what you had for your breakfast? Can you remember where you put your, I don't know, your favourite CD or your favourite MP3 song? Can you remember, you know, the things that you're just meant to be keeping track of? What you'll probably hold on to, you'll find, are the things that are quite scary. So it might be that you've had a run-in with your boss, or you've had an argument with your partner. You know, it's to do with the mapping the dangerous things. We're quite good at tracking those. And the other thoughts will just fall by the wayside. The other thing that we also do with our thinking is that we have different patterns, different ways of thinking, which I'll go on to, and they can be a problem too, and they can contribute towards this. Basically just thoughts which are not useful. That's all I can say. They're just not useful. So I want you to improve your problem awareness. The first way of managing your stress is going to become aware of what's happening. Notice more, I call it. Pay attention more. I've just mentioned all those, you know, thoughts that we can have during the day. So many, it's untrue. But we're very good at telling ourselves a long story, aren't we? We start at the beginning and then we embellish it and then we add to it. And then there's always different layers of thoughts we keep on adding to something. And if we're really good at worrying, my mum taught me to be very good at worrying. You've got this totally like freaked out feeling, you know, that it's the end of the world, and you've got all the sensations on the go because you triggered your stress response. And yeah, you're swimming in thoughts which are not real, they're imagined. So my big tip would be for you to notice when you're just spending a lot of time imagining stuff, it's not really happening in front of you, you're just imagining it. And the imagination doesn't know the difference between real time or whether you're dreaming, whether it's the past or future. It hasn't got a clue. It just runs the pictures and gives you the responses. That's why we can become quite good, or should I say quite bad, at scaring ourselves to death, I call it, which is sitting in that cinema screen, watching a horror film over and over again. Well, we could actually pop next door and watch a Walt Disney one and be happy, but that's me. So we are good at filtering things, information. Information comes in through all of our senses, seeing it, you know, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, and it's the brain's job to sort of reinterpret that into something quite useful. Now, as human beings, we're very good at deleting the information that doesn't match what we already understand. We also distort things. So if you tell me something, I have a way of twisting the story to make it again feel better for me or match what I understand. And we delete things, so you get rid of things, boom, we distort them, bend them a bit, and we filter them. We're always filtering our information because we do have so many bits of information coming at us that really we've got to find a way of just picking up on the important things. So catch your stress-inducing thoughts. That's what I would encourage you to do. Look at those automatic negative thoughts that are happening and begin to work out whether they're real, whether you're imagining them, and then I'll tell you a bit later on about what you can do about it. So look at your hotspots. It could be places, it could be people, it might be the time of day. It might be a particular thought that you have that always gets you into a right state. You know, notice that too. Notice your emotions that go with it. So the journal or your diary, whatever you want to call it, is your way of beginning to pay attention to what's happening to you, because that's going to be your secret weapon, the way in which you're going to, like, you know, solve all the problems that are happening for you. So where do you feel the most pressure? And I would say there are lots of stressors that happen in life, and these are the things that create the stress. Like I said, it could be partners, it could be friends, it could be work, it could be situations, trying new things, it could be, you know, your washing machine breaking down, it could be the fact that it's just raining. You know, you might decide that the fact that's enough for you. And there are big problems in the world and smaller problems in the world. You know, home life I've got down here, work life, personal life. Try and get a handle on where are my problems coming from? What's making me feel tense? What's making me feel anxious? What's making me feel worried and scared? You know, try and work out where that's coming from, because as I just said before, it might be something you're playing over in your head, your imagination, spending too much time in our heads imagining things, yet having the same horrible sensations. So not very, very clever, really, to be spending all of your time in that anxious space. One of my favourite musical references is a song by Queen, and it's called Under Pressure. So if you can go onto YouTube or wherever you do Spotify, all kinds of things, find that song, Under Pressure. It's very interesting, and it's, yeah, we're all under pressure, but we've got to work out what's tolerable in that moment and also recognise when it becomes too much for us. So triggers for these stress-filled, anxious moments and anxious thinking. And I want you to notice if you are stuck in a negative T.E.A. cycle. Now, it's a concept I'll bring in again a bit later on, but it's an abbreviation that I've coined for thoughts, emotions, and actions. A pretty sensible one, really, because there's a connection between what we think, it does affect what we feel, and then that in turn affects what we do. And if you do a nice circle, you can see that you can construct a problem and then, you know, basically work out what's happening. So these things might be happening for you. Random things I've put down on the list, but you can add your own. Keep that journal going. You might be working late in the office. Now, given where we are at the moment in time, you're working probably from home, and it might be a more permanent situation for you working from home. So working in your home office, and you might be taking work home. I had there as well, but we can't get away from it at the moment. So your work life is becoming your home life. It's all getting a bit mashed up, should we say. I've got that I'm not taking proper holidays and taking proper holiday leave. I don't know what's been happening for you in terms of holidays, whether you have been taking any, whether again it's more difficult to do it given that we're spending so much time working from home. It becomes difficult working from home because your home is your castle. It's meant to be the place you go home, shut the door, and the world's behind you outside. And now when you're spending that much time working at home for your job, but also having your family there as well, it can get quite messed up inside of our head and be one long continuous line. So working from home works for some people, but we've all been forced to do it, and we're all managing to certain degrees, you know, well and not so well. But boundaries, they get blurred is what I say. We also are not very good at, dare I say it, turning off our mobile phones, but I call it radio silence. It's not just applying to mobile phones, it's also watching, you know, television programs, always immersing ourselves in doing things, being out with our friends. When do we ever sit down and spend some time with ourselves? I know it's a little bit scary, spending time all by yourself, too much time to think sometimes, but also your brain does need a rest. So it's probably useful to incorporate moments, even if it's a minute, where you just chill out for a bit. There might be nothing happening, no noises, no nothing, just you, and just chilling out, and then come back into the world, and your brain will thank you for it. Sometimes a trigger that can cause us this anxiety is not being able to say no. Now, I do have a problem with saying no to people. I've always had it. And we got this thing about people pleasing, haven't we? That we all go around saying, oh, I'm a people pleaser. But hey, we're all people pleasers. You know, we've been trained by our parents to make them happy and other people around us. So making other people happy is not a bad thing. But learning when to say no because someone has given you something that you object to, or they're piling more work on your plate, in the end, you're doing yourself more harm by not saying no. So learning to say no, it doesn't mean being horrible, doesn't mean being aggressive. It just means learning how to be assertive. And there's lots of training that people give on that. Not about to go into details here, but I'm sure at some point I might do in the future. So having unsatisfying personal relationships, work relationships, you know, bullying at work, all kinds of things happen. And the quality time that we could spend as well, that might be suffering right now, and ignoring health issues. We can be pretty bad at going to doctors. I know men are accused of it, but women can be pretty bad at going to doctors too. And that thing about me time, you know, beyond the silence that I love occasionally, there's the me time. When do I spend some time just doing the things that I like? I like drawing, and I don't sit down enough and do that, you know, and I like craft work. When do I spend enough time doing that? So you have to work out sometimes the things that are going to de-stress you, for want of a word. just going to check on the time by looking at my clock that's up there. Right, okay, still on time, still on target here. Right, how do you know that you're stressed? Good question. So yeah, as I said, it's an evolutionary response that we have. Okay, something happens to us, we suddenly go on red alert, we're paying attention for where the danger might be, and then we're just getting ourselves primed for action. So this energy that's in our body is very, very useful. So how do you know when you've got it? You can either monitor yourself with you know, the kind of symptoms that are happening for you. And if you went to your doctor, there might be a list that he'd give you, or if I'm working with clients, I've got a list of questions that I use. So there's a questionnaires that you have that really help you spot the symptoms. So here's a quick list of some symptoms. You might have this constant jitteriness and nervousness and anxiousness going on in you, butterflies in your stomach, which can be experienced as nausea or cramps. You know, it's really the stomach shutting down and the consequences of that. And in terms of like stomach shutting down, we all have experiences of like rushing off to the toilet. So if you're one of those people that does that kind of thing, including me, that's one of my biggest signs that I am feeling a little bit stressed. I've had this stress hormone go into my body, which is your adrenaline and your cortisol. They're all floating around, and I just need to go to the loo quite a lot. So nervousness can manifest that way, but also excitement. So they're very, very close emotions, nervous, excitement, they're all muddled up. So let's say today, when I've been preparing myself for talking to you, I've had a lot of symptoms. I'm thinking, interesting symptoms, Joy. But like I said at the beginning, we're meaning-making machines. I didn't make it mean anything bad. I actually told myself, oh yeah, I'm going to be on talking to everyone today. Not a problem. I'm okay with that. My body was telling me something slightly different, but I've reinterpreted it as excitement, because excitement and also this nervous anxiety, they can feel very, very much the same. So other things that can happen, you lose interest in the activities you used to enjoy. That's a big one, isn't it? You stop doing the things that you like. You're lacking focus and attention and concentration. You just can't think straight. You might find yourself clenching your jaw more often, and some people at night time, you know, you can be clenching your teeth without realizing it and actually grinding your teeth, and you get given these braces or things to stop you from doing it. Your heart races. What a dead giveaway. That's one of the first ones. Your heart starts pounding like crazy, and you get this tightness in your chest, which can be uncomfortable. Sometimes we reinterpret it as having a heart attack, and you might rush yourself down to A&E. I'm not saying if you have those symptoms not to go to A&E, because you know, you've got to be careful with things. So check yourself out. But notice that it might be because something's just happened and you're in that sort of like tense situation. And that's where the pressure's coming from. So not sleeping well is the next one. Yeah, my sleep gets affected. Does your sleep get affected? I don't sleep very well when I've got problems. And in a way, the brain is not turning off. It's trying to figure things out. And it can be very, very, well, uncomfortable. And you can wake up thinking, I've only had like 2 hours sleep and I've been awake the rest of the time. Now your body will be okay with a less amount of sleep over a short amount of time. You know, it's not going to be the end of the world if you've got 5 hours sleep. But if you're doing it regularly, then it could be a problem. Because I think the best thing for sleep-wise is 7 to 8 hours, if you can. I love 8 hours. People go beyond. But work out that you won't die because you're awake, you know, and you've only slept for 3 hours. So don't worry about that. That's the whole problem. You're buying into the loop again of worrying about not sleeping when you're trying to sleep. That's going to be a recipe for not sleeping because you'll be anxious. So irritability is one of them too. Symptoms, loss of appetite or eating too much, headaches, aches and pains. Aches and pains are really interesting just around the body because we don't realize how tense we are, and especially around our shoulders, legs, you know, just the tension that we hold. And the best way to work out that you're tense is to do something called a progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense something and then let it go, tense it and let it go. And then you're getting this contrast between knowing that what it feels like to have, let's say, a relaxed shoulder or a relaxed leg, or whatever it might be, because really that's how you're going to notice the difference between tension, or between, well, I've lost myself there, but you're going to notice basically that you're no longer, oh, my brain's gone, and that's okay. I want you to know that whenever you're talking to someone, or something matters to you, that happens. You get this kind of brain fog that comes over to you, because your brain, my brain is actually probably a couple of sentences ahead. And I'm telling myself now to just bring myself back to the present, literally saying, Joy, bring yourself back to the present. And that's going to help me to calm down, and perhaps pay attention to what's on the slides. That might help me too. Another big clue to get me back on track. But not sleeping well, irritability, loss of appetite, headaches, aches and pains. That's where I got stuck, on aches and pains. I wanted to tell you more and I didn't. Nervously waiting for something bad to happen. That's a horrible sensation, I think, just waiting. One of my worst ones. That's a selection of them. And there's obviously lots more. And I want you to start tracking your stress-inducing thoughts. Like I said, get that journal out. The other assessments are also rating certain items on a scale of 1 to 10. You've probably been to, let's say, a life coach, or you can see a life coach will always go, well, they'll always talk about scaling something and always rating something on a scale of 1 to 10. But really, we're trying to get you to work out your before and your after, and also to work out if things are changing during sessions. So when I'm tracking things, you could simply just write down, think of 1 to 10, where do you fall on something? Goodness me, I'm trying to get my brain back in gear again. So that's a prime example of stress in progress, isn't it? My brain is doing things to me, I'm making it mean something, and the more I think about it meaning something bad, the worse I perform. So get back on track myself. Tracking and assessments. So if you drew a line and sort of labelled it 1 to 10, you could monitor something like your breathing. At one end, you could put, I'm breathing okay, fine. At the other end, I'm breathing really awfully. And you can monitor yourself on that throughout the day. So you might check yourself first thing in the morning, you might rate yourself again in the evening, and you can see whether there's a difference between those two. Other thing I've put down here is butterflies flying in formation. So that might mean something to you, it might not mean anything, but when we're anxious, we talk about having butterflies in our tummy. And one of the things that I loved reading was, if your butterflies are flying in formation, then you're okay. Like, that's great, as opposed to a disordered kind of way of flying. Anxiety is not bad. You just have to recognize what's happening and how you interpret it. So butterflies flying in formation. And access to your logical mind is one thing you could look at. And the other extreme, no access to your logical mind. And also on the previous slide, you could pick up on any of those items and list them on a scale of 1 to 10, again, to track where you are. And with your journal keeping, I want you to always get a baseline reading. So to get yourself that reading at the very, very beginning, like we're talking now, and you might think, okay, I'm going to do what Joy says, I'm going to try that in a week's time. In a week's time, you might actually look back and think, okay, my breathing was very erratic at the beginning, so I had all these thoughts about stress, and now actually I'm doing okay. I've got better ideas. My breathing seems to be a lot better. And you can just begin to rate how you're improving and, start bringing some of the things I'm going to say on what you can do. Here's another way of looking at, again, stress, monitoring it on a scale of 1 to 10. I've put different things at either end, but really what you're doing is putting one thing at one end that's an extreme end of the other. So if you were asleep, if it was sleep, let's say, you could put down sleeping well at one end and not sleeping well at the other. And again, over a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you could see whether that figure improved. I put down things around reframing your ideas. What we have to do is have things come into our world and be able to reinterpret them, be able to find that one alternative way of looking at something. So I put down embracing this idea of reframing, because we all think that's just the way we are. That's just the way I am. I'm thinking, well, things can be altered. And you have to believe that, yes, actually I can change if I want to. Okay, and these tools are to help you to at least begin to explore the idea that you can change. So I think I've written that down twice, so totally ignore me on what's written on the slide. But I want you to pick on a situation in your life that you want to monitor. You might, let's say Yu Zhong's on the line listening. So I might say, I want to improve my communication with Yu Zhong. And I have at one end, really, really bad at communicating with her, number 1. And number 10 might be, I'm really, really good. So how would I rate myself at the moment? Supposing I gave myself a 5 today. And then the next time I spoke to Yu Zhong in a week's time, I might say, it's a 7. I seem to be doing a lot better with explaining myself to her. So you want to be able to give yourself that feedback as well on any item. And again, what I've written on here, ignore that, but put something at one end and then the other end is an extreme or a place that you want to arrive at. I hope I've explained that well, but I'll move on. So you have harmful thinking patterns and you're probably thinking, Joy, what are you on about now? Well, there's an idea that what we see, as I said, is not necessarily what really exists, because we have a way of filtering information through our brains. We end up deleting things we don't like. We end up distorting and twisting things that we want to, and we generalize. We do a lot of things. So these thinking styles can get us into a lot of trouble when it comes to negative thinking and can keep you stuck in a loop, basically. So generalizing is when you sort of have something happens to you and you decide that it's a fact. So I use the example a lot that it rained, let's say on a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and you come to visit me, and I look you square in the face and I say, guess what? It's going to rain today at 2 o'clock. And you're thinking, what's Joy on about again? And say, why are you saying that, Joy? I say, well, because last week Friday it rained at 2 o'clock. You think, wow, Joy, you know, doesn't work that way. But we can begin to form patterns. We call it generalizing. We do it in life as well. Let's say you get something wrong. You say, I'm always going to get it wrong. You know, supposing you're not good at something, I'll never be good at that. So we have ways of, you know, distorting information. Predictive thinking, the next one down on the slide, is one of my favorites because I do it a lot. I'm a predictive thinker, crystal ball reader, like a little gypsy reading, you know, looking in the crystal ball and deciding that I know what the future is going to be. Of course I don't, but I do it an awful lot and jump into conclusions. So that kind of way of thinking all the time becomes so habitual, you don't even realize that you're doing it. So I could be with you and I could say, oh, I know what you're going to say. Oh, I thought you'd say that. Oh, and you just begin to like live outside of your head somehow and in this kind of dream world. I want you to pull yourself back in for starters, because predictive thinking is useful to a certain degree, okay? And as human beings, we've evolved to have a certain amount of predictive thinking. It's kind of what puts us towards the top of the food chain. Well, the top. You know, we can work out what's going to happen, or at least have an idea based on past experiences. But watch and pay attention to when you're doing it too often, because they tend to go hand in hand, the predictive thinking, with catastrophizing, which now you're in trouble. You're not only predicting things, you're also predicting the worst outcome. They work hand in hand and they're really, really terrible partners, and they can create problems for you when it comes to stress. And then we've got our black and white thinking. People who are very inflexible, they don't seem to have any, it's either their way or the highway, or it's either right or it's wrong. And I would encourage you, if that's what you do, to introduce shades of grey. You know, when life becomes an either or situation, it means that you're backing yourself into a corner a lot of the time and triggering that stress response without realizing it. Being a perfectionist and a procrastinator. Now, again, I'm going to hold my hand up to that because I do it a lot. I am a perfectionist. I don't think I prepared these slides today. I don't think they're perfect enough, to be quite honest, in my eyes, but I had to stop. So you have to know when to stop as well, and recognize that your perfectionistic streaks don't necessarily make things that much better. You know, have your own standard, you know, which might be not 100% all of the time. It might be 80%. And on a really bad day, you might say, I'll let it go down to 60 because I've got a cold, I've got a bit of flu, I'm not feeling well, something else happened in my life. Today, my best standard is going to be 60. Okay, so that's about being kind to yourself as well. But I am a perfectionist, I admit it. It's not a bad thing. It means I care. But you have to work out when it's stopping you from finishing things. I finished this, so it's good. But work out when it does do that. And the last thing on this is you can be your own worst enemy. So this is about us taking the blame for a lot of things and being quite self-punishing. We do it a lot. You know, we blame ourselves for things. And I think as children, we have learned to do that. A lot of this is learned behavior. You know, you're not born this way, you learn to be this way. And I like then to think if I have acquired these habits, I can undo them. So yeah, keep practicing. So spot those harmful thought patterns. Ask yourselves, you know, lots of questions, including the two which I really like asking myself when I start to get these sensations in my body, heart racing, rumbly tummy, tension in my arms. You know, I ask myself these questions because I know I have triggered my stress response. And my body is thinking, oh my God, there's a lion, there's a tiger. No, ask yourself this question, am I truly in danger? You know, the biggest organ on your body is your skin. You would never call it an organ, but it's an organ. I've been reading lots of books about it. It's your skin, and it will spot if there's any danger. So ask yourself, is there a fire? Is there a flood? You know, reassure your brain that there isn't. And that will be one notch down, you know, starting to calm down. Also, try and say good things to yourself, call them mantras or something you repeat to yourself. So I like to tell myself in that moment when my heart is racing that joy, you're safe. Joy, you're safe. I know it sounds a bit silly, but I repeat it to myself. I'm the mother to myself. I'm the sister to myself. I'm that best friend to myself in that moment to calm myself down. And it's no different to what you would do to a small child. You know, if a small child came into your, you know, vicinity and they were crying, you would calm them down. You'd say, come on, breathe now. Calm down, calm down. Everything's going to be fine. You've got to be able to do that internally to yourself. In the absence of someone being nearby to give you that hug or to give you that reassurance as well. Just check on the time. Right, okay, I'm behind time. I've got to speed up. So find better solutions. Find better solutions. Wow, I love that word solutions. And I think I spelled that properly for a change. That's good news. Now, this stress teacup that I was talking about at the beginning, this is just my way of giving you an idea of your teacup will keep filling up and up and up and up and up. We'll get to the brim. And the picture next to it is a bucket of water spilling over. So really, stuff keeps pouring in and it just goes all over the shop. Now, you don't really ever want your teacup to get that full, do you? Well, I certainly don't, because it makes a mess on my carpet. But the T cycle, T.E.A. cycle, thoughts, emotions, and actions. Just keep that idea in your head. And I want to show you something which I use with my clients as well. I use these rings. Looks like the Olympic rings, doesn't it? But I use one to represent thoughts, one to represent emotions, and one to represent my actions. And then when you bring those all together, you recognize and you realize they all work together as one. So that's the connection I want you to try and keep in mind with this thoughts, emotions, and actions. And I call it the T cycle. Draw it on a piece of paper with a circle and write down what thought you're having at that moment. Something happens to set the whole process off. What thought are you having at that moment? What action does that go with? What emotion does it go with? So the thoughts and the emotions, I want you to link very quickly. First of all, the thought leads to the emotion. Write something down, and then what action do you take or what happens? And the overall general consequence of this whole thing working. What you're doing is being quite analytical. So I call it kind of deconstructing the problem to reconstruct something more positive. And the sheets kind of roll out. The middle example is just someone, I think I filled out a bit more details there. And the far one on the right-hand side is just a blank. Okay, so catch your stressy thoughts. use those diaries, notice uncomfortable sensations in your body, notice your behaviors. You will become better, if there's such a word, at handling stress if you're more aware. Awareness is I suppose, the centerpiece for a lot of things, but awareness with stress is so important because, as I said, if your thoughts are just jumping all over the place and we're having a thought a second, don't believe everything that your thoughts say. Some of them are lying to you, which is a terrible thought, isn't it? My thoughts lie to me. Oh my goodness me. Sometimes they do. Sometimes my thoughts don't make any sense at all, and I laugh at them. They're that ridiculous. So get good at spotting them, okay? It's really, really important to do. And this idea that stress is a killer, really, you know, I want you to change the way you view and talk about stress. Try and break it down into 3 bits if you can. The first one we're very familiar with is fight and flight response. You know, fight and flee, run away. Sometimes we freeze. That's one of my favorites. That's what I do. We can also flop, which is faint, and also this word called fawn, which is we can, you know, just basically comply and be what someone wants us to be. But the first one, the threat and the harm one, is the one that kicks off the most. I want you to recognize that you could also view that energy as challenge energy, because it's the same thing. It's what I used today when I was designing all the slides and everything else. It's challenge energy. It felt the same in my body, to be quite honest, but I did tell myself it was something completely different. And the last way you might want to view again this energy is that this energy that I've got, the challenge is too much for me right now. I haven't got the resources. So what I need to do is talk to you, Jean, about it, or find somebody who understands this, and they will give me some advice or some support on what I need to do. And that energy, sometimes I can also be extending it to other people. So I could be using that energy in a crisis situation to fix something, to sort something, to help someone else. So I like to just view it as energy, okay? But the first response is totally automatic. It's your biological response, survival, survival, survival. That's the only reason why our body thinks we're here. But we're very sophisticated now, apparently, and we've got more things to do than just survive. But depending on what's happening in your environment, that might be the level that you're operating at. And with the economy being difficult at the moment, people can feel that they're living at that survival level. And if you are feeling that you're living at survival level, you're going to be reasonably stressed. I mean, anxious. It all makes sense, to be quite honest. So I haven't mentioned the solutions, have I? Better quickly move on to those. Right, stress hormones. I'm going to quickly go over these slides now. So I've mentioned something about the hormones that we have in our body that help us to respond to stress, and that is adrenaline, which is also called epinephrine, and cortisol, that give us the energy that we need. And be quite honest, if you're bored, you'll know that you haven't got any of that going on. But when you're excited and hyper, you'll have some of this in your body. It's not a bad thing, remember. The thing with it is that if you have so much problems going on and it's going on for too long a period of time, it can get to this thing called burnout, which is a whole new topic in itself. But I think it's stress ramped up by 100, let's say. Excuse me. So find your own happy balance. That's really what you need to do. And again, hormones, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and I've mentioned epinephrine and adrenaline. A nice acronym there for DOSE. So ways which you can just remember things. And they combine in different ways depending on what's happening in our lives. So more solutions. Should drink some water, shouldn't I? More solutions. My favorite solution is breathing. Yeah, you're saying, Joy, breathing. Yeah, of course. Well, breath is really, really valuable. It's something you can focus on in the moment to bring yourself down and calm yourself down. And I've drawn there what could be classified as an infinity circle or the figure 8. But when you want to get yourself back into a good space, try and get your oxygen intake and your carbon dioxide, breathing out bit, get them balanced. That's the reason why hyperventilation happens, because they're out of sync. So get your body into a regular breathing pattern. And when your body recognizes that, it will actually say, oh, Joy's not stressed anymore. Because if she were running away from a lion, her heartbeat would be all over the place, her breathing would be erratic, it would know. So if you try and trick your body, it's a very good trick. Regular breathing 3 in breaths, 3 in out breaths, or 3 in breaths, 4 out, whatever you want to do, but get that regulation there. And it's almost using your body, your physical body, to tell your brain that something's okay. And in reverse, you can use your brain in certain occasions to talk your body down, which is especially mine this morning. I use my brain to say, okay, Joy, okay, I know your heart rate has gone up a bit. I know it. I know you've just been to the loo a few times. I know that. I know whatever. But guess what? It's because you're excited. So I used my brain to calm my body down, which was lovely. It's a nice way to go. So belly breathing, please read about the belly breathing. But again, when we breathe in, our belly should be going out, which is up, fat. We don't like being fat, so perhaps we don't like doing this. And when we breathe out, our belly should be going flatter. So we don't breathe very well, and we're not using all our lung capacity. So remember this idea about when we breathe in, there's a balloon inside your stomach, and it's just inflating, and that's it. That's the way that we should be breathing. And taking in enough oxygen is a good idea anyway. So solutions that relieve stress, quite a few. And there's more which I haven't mentioned, but self-help books, retreats and short holidays. We wish we could have holidays at the moment. Motivational seminars or webinars like this one, for example. I put on Anthony Robbins because he's my favorite guru, but personal development courses, exercise, walking. I do star jumps sometimes to get my brain out of a bit of a funk when it's stressed. It breaks my state. It energizes me and it gives me oxygen. So it's actually interesting doing star jumps. And it can be a very good way just to get rid of that excess energy sometimes just before you're going to do something, do something a little bit like run on the spot for a bit and then stop. It sounds a bit weird, but try it. Mantras, I just mentioned mantras, affirmation. I put down spandex here. Now, why do I put down spandex? Anyway, it's probably meant to be a joke, but my jokes are not always popular. But mantras, affirmations, and some spandex, and anything else that you can think of. And I'm sure I've got lots, but I can't get everything on the slides. So what we've learned today, I'm doing okay. I'll start winding up. Empty that tea stress cup. Notice that your fear response is getting triggered. It might be happening far too often. You're getting yourself into those loops, those T cycles, and monitor your beliefs. And I think this is me back then in the day, having stress just after I got my degree. I was stressed, anxious, loss of motivation, chronically disappointed, etc. And look at me now today. Hey, I survived. So you can survive stress, okay? As I said, it's not entirely a bad thing. And I've got a book coming out. Not plugging my book. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Of course, I'm plugging my book, Navigating Stress. 10th of June. If you're interested in finding out more, here are some details on the slides. Of course, you'll be getting those. For those of you who might not, get the slides through and everything else, it's joy@catchathought.co.uk. That's my email address. Or come back to Yujong and she'll give you the information. Or just look for me, Joy Langley or Karen Joy Langley. I've got 2 names. I'm special. So yeah, you've got some questions. Yay, we did it. So Yujong, I'm done.
Oh, super, Joy. Thank you so much. How do you
feel? So over time, but never mind.
Oh, Joy, how do you feel? You've done wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing?
No, I was also focusing on what you were saying, honestly. Many techniques that I learned new today, even though I already knew some CBT techniques and so on. Oh, so we have some chats coming through, and sometimes when the setting is to panelists, only Joey and I can see, but we do have some comments coming through from Galaxy A70. Thank you so much, Joy. Also, Galaxy A70 shared this comment. I get very anxious just before I get up. So I have been doing some regular breathing exercises and they are helping.
That's a good idea. And feeling anxious just before you wake up, that happens to me too, which is like kind of strange. I want you to perhaps notice that just before you wake up, like almost like 2 nanoseconds, whatever that is, you're actually okay, aren't you? And then it changes. And you notice that your heart's suddenly racing. And I always try and work out this connection between what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling a little bit nervous, I work it backwards. What were you thinking, Joy, just before you felt that? And invariably, I've started my day waking up by thinking about what I've got to do. I'm already working out what I need to do, what I haven't done, what's going to go right, what's going to go wrong. I'm already in that phase of working, and I'm just about to get out of bed. So that can be why we feel anxious sometimes. You know, it happens. And also we are trying to solve problems. So there's a lot going on. Sleep is quite nice because if you have a reasonably good amount of sleep, you're knocked out for a while and the world seems great. As soon as we wake up, the world's back on our doorstep again. So we do have to start thinking about the problems, perhaps the things that we don't want to face. Pardon me. So that can be a problem. But yes, anxiety in the mornings, it happens. I would say don't make it mean too much in my world. So yeah, don't make it mean too much. And if it does persist and it becomes a problem where it's stopping you from functioning well, then you might want to talk to, you know, a health practitioner or, you know, a therapist. But within reason, I would say that every now and then that happens.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much, Joy. We have some questions coming through. One is from also Galaxy A70. Any tips on how to say no?
How to say no? Wow. Okay, my favorite way of saying no is realizing that if I don't say no, let's say to Galaxy's requests to buy a whole, you know, to hand over all my money, I'm going to feel really like angry tomorrow at not having done that. And I live with that knowledge for weeks. So I realized a while back that it's better to kind of bite the bullet, as they say, and be able to say, well, Galaxy, I know you'd like to have my wealth and my money, but in this instance, I can't really oblige, but try me again next week. You never know. You might be in with a shout. That's what we say in the UK. Might be in with a shout. I might do it. So it's almost recognizing that you're important too, because there's a power imbalance, isn't there, when you're deciding that you have to hand over X, Y, Z to someone, whether it's your power, whether it's items. I want you to basically realize you're on the same level, you're equals. And saying no to someone, we talk about saying no to someone so that you can make room for the things that you want to say yes to. Really lovely phrase that I love. The more things you keep on saying yes to, which you don't really need to do, prevents you from doing the things that you really do. So you owe it to yourself to find a polite way of saying, well, got a bit too much right now, I can't do it. Or if it's your boss, obviously, asking you to do loads of things, explain what you're doing, break down the amount of time that each thing is taking you, so that you can physically see that I've only got like 1 hour, there's no way I can fit in 100 things. It's just not possible. There are 60 minutes in an hour. So at the most, I could do 60 things, 1 thing a minute. That's not possible. You break it down so someone can see your logic. So that's what you're helping people to do, to see your logic. But I know the fear about, ooh, I can't say no, I must say yes. But in the end, you come off worse than the person that's asking.
Thank you, Joy.
I hope that helped.
Yeah. Oh, thank you from Galaxy A70, and I wish you all the best. Say no. Hopefully, you have a chance to practice how to say no. As Joy said, this week. We have another question. Don't we also encounter situations which are objectively stressful? For example, if someone's lost a job and it is struggling financially, are there ways to handle that sort of situation too, where stress is a reasonable response?
Yes, and of course, there are things that happen to us that are so totally out of our control. And, you know, sorry to hear that there's money stuff going on, but in between working out how you're feeling, let's think, working out how you're feeling, there is that place where you have to move on to solutions. Okay, so the money situations are hard. So it's kind of like, who can you talk to perhaps put a halt to the amount of money that's going out of your bank account for certain things, whether it's direct debits or whether it's your mortgage, you know, your house, your flat, whatever. Who can you speak to again, reduce it or stop it for that moment, to actually allow you that window to recover. Also, I suppose with around, let's say, losing a job, you've also, and having financial problems, if that's the case, you've got to work out, what am I thinking? Because you can easily fall into that, I'm never going to find another job again, which is one of those thinking styles where we're catastrophizing. And I encourage you to think positively about the future, which is, yes, I will find something. Things are hard at the moment, but it's going to happen. And I know you might not, you'd be grappling with these two thoughts, but I would encourage you to decide which is the most useful one to have. The one where it makes you feel awful, which again, you know, you're guessing that you're never going to have a job, or the one that, of course, I'm going to get a job. So you find your own little way of encouraging yourself to think positively. I hope that helps. Keep an eye on your time here. What do you think, you and Jean? How could that be answered? Because you work with mental health too, and finances and stuff. So,
I mean, I was going to ask you a question on that actually, if you don't mind, Joy. I mean, you know, when I'm worried about something, Joy, I mean, you know already how I worry, but when I'm worried about something, I have this rumination. The same thoughts keep coming to my head, and I want to stop them because my head says, "Silly, don't worry about it. It's nothing. Rational mind, come on, it's nothing." But these thoughts, emotional thoughts with very, very strong emotions attached, keep coming back to my head, and they don't leave me. And I'm like, oh, I just don't want to think about it, but it doesn't leave me. Do you have any techniques at all to stop these thoughts that you don't even want to have?
yeah, well, rumination, you're quite right. That is a very posh word for just the fact I'm having these kind of circular thoughts going on. And you mentioned possibly intrusive thoughts, so things coming into our head and we just don't want them to come into our heads. But I want you to just go back to the beginning, which is, do you believe every thought that you have? So that's a good starting point, because it is a thought that feels very, very believable. I want you to recognize that you have a way of deconstructing it, which is breaking it down into thoughts, emotions, and actions. So this thought is attached to this feeling, and it makes me do this, you know. And finally, another way of looking at it is a very, very quick way of, I do it myself, flipping a thought. So imagine a coin, two sides to a coin. Is there another way of looking at it? And struggle as much as you can to find the other way of looking at something, a positive way. Because rumination is about getting into a habit of thinking that worrying solves things. Worrying doesn't solve things, it makes you feel awful. But I switch it from worrying to solutions. I think, oh, I'm going to find some solutions. Now, it might feel like the same process, but it's a different word. So solutions feel so much better than worrying, because worrying is very useless. It's a very useless activity. So switch to solutions. I would encourage you to do that. Deconstruct it if you can. Flip the thought, find an alternative way of looking at it, and then see how that changes the way that you feel and the way that you then behave. And when you get really good at challenging your negative thinking, you can have what I call a beach ball. And the beach ball has got like 6 or 7 colours down the side, you know. And like I said, blow it up, put it in a room. You're on one side, I'm on the other. And I'll shout at you, what is the colour you, Jean? You say, oh, it's blue. I say, no, it's red. And we switch around the room a bit. I say, what colour is it? Oh, it's yellow. You'll say, I say, no, it's green. So just notice that wherever you are, it's perspective in life. And the beach ball thing always, I love it, because it means there must be at least 7 different ways of looking at things. And get other people to help you if you're really stuck on finding another way of seeing something. Because other people are very good at challenging our thoughts and really seeing things differently.
That's really helpful, Joe. Thank you so much. I'll not forget the beach ball, and there are different perspectives from where you are seeing the beach ball. So I just want to say thank you so much, Joey, for being a great friend. You know, whilst we prepare this summit and your session, you've been amazing. Whenever I had any preparing sort of prep sessions with Joey, I just always laughed out loud throughout. So it's just wonderful. She does bring, it's not a pun, she does bring me joy and happiness whenever I talk to her. And I'm sure any, all of you I can see in the chat today, who joined this session must have felt our energy and the happiness. So Joy, thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure, Yuzhong. Thank you for putting everything together. You are quite amazing.
Oh.
Very, extremely amazing, actually. Extremely amazing.
You're my confidence booster. Thank you. No one says that, but thank you, Joy. I also want to say thank you so much to the audience who tuned in tonight, and all of those lovely comments and questions. Thank you. Oh, we have another comment from Galaxy 70. Thank you so much for your time and presentation. Thank you, Joy.
My pleasure.
So I'll share this presentation and YouTube slides. The session. I'll upload the session to YouTube later on, and I'll email the Galaxy A70, who has been the most engaging audience of the day. You're the star audience. So it's the slides as well. And Joey has been writing this book, as you've seen.
Oh my goodness me, how could I forget about my book? Should I put it back to my book?
Yes, please.
Thank you for mentioning that.
So navigating stress, I know how much time and energy Joy has put into this. With Joy's, a lot of experience as a counselor. This book has all the techniques on how to manage your stress. So do have a check when the book is out in June. I'll surely go to Waterstones and just check it out on the 10th of June. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you so much for the plug. Brilliant.
Thank you everyone for joining. Hope you have a stress-free week next week using the tips and techniques that you learned from Joy today. Thank you everyone.
Okay, bye everyone. See you. Bye.